Welcome, everyone, to this podcast. I'm here today with my guests, Gareth Duignam and Eva Müller. I'm really excited to introduce all of you to these two wonderful, bright, powerful souls who are helping our world so much. Their presence in my life has been really wonderful and helpful to me. I know they're already famous in their own right, so some of you may already know them. Gareth and Eva, thank you for being here with me today. We're going to have a lovely time. I'd like to start out by just saying that I consider you both great teachers, and I really appreciate the gifts that have been bestowed upon you through your connection and relationship with wholeness, the source of creation. The fact that you're using your lives and you're using your time to share those gifts with the world is really huge. It really means a lot. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for being here. I thought I'd like to just start out by asking each of you if you could spend a moment or two just explaining to everyone how you got here and what was your inspiration to step into this field of supporting the awakening of our world in the way that you do. Yeah.
What got me here is that I've already connected with Dorothy, and we've had Dorothy on our podcast a few months back, and we connected and we got to know one another, and we had an absolutely amazing time. But I mean,
That's nice.
in terms of what got me onto my spiritual path,
Yeah.
I guess it would have started around fear. Fear, been a young child, been fearful of dying, fearful of what death was, not knowing, feeling like I didn't belong, feeling like I didn't fit in, was a big part of me growing up as a child, and um, always having this curiosity, kind of like a drive to want to know more, right? What does happen if we die? Is there an afterlife? Do I stop existing? And I just went on a binge. I was just like, I want to know I got to a certain stage in my life, right, where I exhausted everything. I couldn't find happiness in the outside world, in relationships, in jobs, and I just wanted answers, right? So I came across, I think the first book that really, really got my interest was Dr. Brian Weiss' Many Lives, Many Masters, where he's a hypnotherapist who's regressing people back into past lives. And I was like, wow, if there's past lives, that means we continue on after we leave the body. And then I went from Brian Wise on, I came across Bob Monroe, the outer body guy, and I started reading his books. And all of a sudden I was like, wow, is this real? Like here was this gentleman, this very wealthy American gentleman who back in the late 50s started spontaneously leaving his body. And I was like, oh, I want to do that. If I can do that, then I know that I live beyond the body. So I started practicing and practicing and practicing, and I bought all of these books on this out of body phenomena. And about 3 months into me practicing, I woke up one evening with vibrations running up and down my body, and all of a sudden this whoosh of energy came in, and I left the body. I
Oh,
was
wow.
catapulted out through the roof, and I found myself flying over the fields. And I remember being, in the air, looking around, going, "I did it! I did it! I'm out of my body." And I eventually landed in a field, and I looked down at my hands, and I was like, "I'm out of my body. I don't die." And all of a sudden, then it was like an elastic band pulled me back into my body. I sat up out of the bed, and I was like, "I did it!" I was so excited. I didn't sleep a wink that night. The next day, I just kept walking around, going,
God.
"We don't die." And I needed that, Dorothy. I really, really needed that because I was so skeptical. I was so a non-believer. So that
Mm.
was really, really important for me. And I then went on to have about 2 years of spontaneous, about a year and a half, spontaneous out-of-body experiences would start happening over and over and over again, a couple of times every week. And I had a lot of fun with it. And then eventually they subsided and got quieter. And then my real work started, right? I started going through like this process of being given lessons in dream states,
Mm,
um, fear tests. They let me go through an experience of what it felt like to actually pass on, leave the body, how that felt. They'd bring me back into my body, they'd bring me out, back into the death process, and just got me really comfortable. They were like, look, there's nothing to it. There is nothing to worry. There's no fear around this. Um, so then there was an illness, and I know you went through a bit of an illness, and a lot of people um I come across who are going through spiritual awakening, there's always seems to be something in the background around people, a kind of a mysterious illness seems to come along their path. So I had a big illness that came that put me in bed for about a year and a half. Um, and it really, really like knocked me. It really like it my whole identification was just taken away with this illness.
mm,
Um, I came out the other side of the illness. I kind of just was getting on with my life. I was running a business. And then one day, all of a sudden, I was in the gym one morning and I just stopped. And I kind of had this sense that there was something strange going on, almost like a feeling of there was something watching me. And I went, hmm. And I started to listen to the music and there was sun coming in through the windows. And I said, all of them sounds, all the clanking and the music, it's not external. I said, I'm hearing that inside of my consciousness. I said, the sun is actually internal. It's not outside. And as soon as that happened, there was a rip in my consciousness, like Velcro being pulled apart, like this. And then what I can only describe as the supreme being, God, the universe, woke up and became lucid in me, right? So
oh, how
started looking out through my
beautiful.
eyes, looked around the gym, and all of a sudden there was all this supreme knowledge downloading, right? Flooding in really, really fast. Like, oh, I am something. I've fallen asleep and I've dreamt myself into this character. And here he is, and he's, and all the time I was trying to figure out, I was like, yes, all of this was coming in, all this information, but I was like looking around and I was like, oh, and I'm also the walls, and I'm the sun, and I'm the other people. And there was a point where the information came in that I was the supreme being that had just woke up in this one right here, but I was also that teenager, right, stood over in the corner, lifting up his top, looking at his abs in the mirror, right? But I was still asleep in that one, right? I had woke up
Right.
through this form, but still sleepwalking in that one. And that started to become really overwhelming. I sat down, tears started flooding down my face. I picked up my bag, couldn't stay. I left the gym, went out and made my way into work. And after about 10 or 15 minutes, that aperture started to close down, right? Started to close down. I was like, what's happening? Still felt really amazing. And from that moment on, the God realization disappeared, but I was left in a state of permanent self-realization.
Beautiful.
The self was now awake to itself through my physical form. And
Beautiful.
that was then the part of my journey. That was when I became a spiritual seeker and started
Mm,
to go through all the different levels of awakening.
mm,
So I hope
mm.
is that enough? Or
Oh, yeah, that's so
I don't
beautiful.
want to take up too much. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's really wonderful. It's a beautiful story. Your description of that time after the out of body experiences subsided and you really started learning a lot, having lessons. And so it reminds me very much of a period I also went through after it was like an initiation into the School of Mysteries, that there's
Yeah.
this, I think of it as areas of the very deepest abstract layers of creation. There are these different regions where various laws of nature are lively. And there's one region where it's a place of learning. It's a very supreme place of learning. And that when you wake up to that, it's like once one is woken up to that, that the way that the lessons come is never quite the same again. You know, the
Mm.
the relationship with knowledge and with the way that the body integrates knowledge, it becomes very intimate, I guess we could say. And it feels to me as if at that place there's access to all the greatest teachings and teachers and wisdom in the universe. And it's just, it's such a delight to go there, to be in that area of one's own field of self, and to be able to play in those waves of knowledge, and to have those experiences that actually change and cultivate the nervous system to make it more ripe for receiving knowledge. And it's just really beautiful as you described it. I'm like, oh, that's just so familiar. I just love it. That's one of the sweet experiences on the path. Thank you. And
Classroom. It's a classroom.
It's a classroom. Yeah. Yeah. It's really beautiful.
You.
Also, I wanted to say one more thing about that, which is that I've been discussing different perspectives or angles of understanding the human condition with, anyway, various people in my world. And one of them was that the Eastern tradition tends to look at the human condition more like the soul comes into a classroom, and the waking up process is a process of learning, basically. Whereas the Western tradition tends to look at it a little more like the world is a hospital and we come here to heal. And I'm still, for myself, I feel like I'm still kind of looking at these two perspectives and finding, where do they really, how do they come to work together, really come to work together? But anyway, that's we'll look more at that as we go along a little bit. But anyway,
Sure.
thank you for sharing. That's so beautiful.
Thank you, Dorothy.
Yeah. Eva, did you want to talk about how you came to this place that you are now, and the great responsibility that you hold to support other people on their journey, and the gifts that you bring to it?
Yes, of course. So a very great question. Thank you. So I basically had a normal life experience, growing up normally, going to school, and then going to university. And there was always something missing. So no matter what I tried on a human level, go to the gym and train and look toned, or be really good at my exams and, get good grades, or have a good job where I earn good money and stuff like that. So it was always something missing. So for a while I was satisfied, but then there was something missing. And with that, just for some reason, a lot of suffering came. So because I couldn't find what I was looking for, there was just a lot of suffering. And I had phases in my life where there was just a lot of, I just call them low vibrational experiences going on all the time, low vibrational emotions. Because I just couldn't find what I was looking for. Basically then I realized I can't really find it outside. I read it in a smart book. I don't remember which one, but I read it somewhere. So I have to find the fulfillment inside. And then I started listening to different podcasts. So that was really helpful. I was reading a few books and also did some online courses where I did guided meditations. And basically what happened, I was able to access my inner world, and I kind of started to understand, okay, I have emotions, I'm not the emotions, I have thoughts, but I'm not the thoughts, and stuff like that. And then there was this one specific meditation where I dropped in such a deep state. So there was no thoughts, no emotions. My body was gone, like the whole Eva was gone. It was just like the beingness, right? So being in that really calm presence. And that was just so beautiful. And this is basically when I started to become interested in meditation. And I was very lucky. A friend of mine introduced me to different spiritual beings like Mother Mira. And he also introduced me to Gareth. And then basically I just started meditating with Gareth in his group. So when I was a total beginner, so I didn't even know what he was doing, that he was working with a transmission or anything like that. And I've never really meditated before in silence for an hour. So I just met him and I thought, okay, for some reason he has something, I trust him, and I just go with that. I go with what he says. And then I joined the group and I started meditating, and I didn't feel anything at first. It was really hard to sit, for an hour, but I just knew, okay, there is something there. So I need to go into that direction. So I can't find it in the 3D world. I can't find happiness here, but I feel like I can find it there. And yeah, and basically I started to learn that there is a spiritual path and there is spiritual awakening and there is enlightenment and all of that. So I didn't really know what it was before. Yeah, and I just followed along whatever was coming up. So, and I was working with Gareth one-on-one settings to raise the level of consciousness, to realize then, yeah, I'm actually not the body, and I'm not the thoughts and all of that. So this becomes permanent, and just went through various levels of consciousness. And then, yeah, basically the human experience starts changing, right? So you understand your system more, you understand how it works, you see your limitations, you see the conditioning, the traumas and all of that. And this was a big part I had to work through on that path as well. And yeah, everything I had to work through myself is now found in my work as well. So that was really helpful. Back then when you go through that, you're like, it's not so nice. But now, yeah, I'm grateful because now I can help from that level. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's very beautiful. And does it ever really end? I don't even know.
Probably not.
It's such a spectrum. The human condition is a spectrum between, from that level of experience of complete union with totality, with the unbounded field of being, all the way through to the physical material body, which is always bound and constrained by the laws of space and time and causation and everything, relationship, everything.
Yeah, so but what I just love is about this path, that it's a constant, it's changing all the time. The more we change, or the more we open and the more we understand, more information can come in and we can work with that and help people. So it's like, it's ongoing. And this is what I love about it. It's so interesting.
Yeah. And from my perspective, it doesn't happen without the nervous system, right? Because each time we have an experience of awakening or experience of wholeness or completeness, fullness, then that causes the nervous system to respond by becoming more stable and more flexible. And then the nervous system, which is kind of like the carrier or vehicle of awareness, becomes better able to be that carrier and to allow awareness to go even further and deeper into that experience of wholeness the next time that wave comes, or if it's even a continuous wave, if it's always there, constantly there, it means that the constantly there experience keeps deepening and deepening, becoming more and more enriched, because the nervous system itself becomes more and more capable of holding space, you could say, for awareness to have that experience. That's just, it's a beautiful, sweet story that you have, Eva, because, like Gareth was saying, it's really common that people will go through, a period of illness. I definitely did. I went through kind of what I would call my dark night of the soul, where I was very ill for a while and nobody could help me. So I had to find my own way with it. I guess what I'm saying about this is I'm just wondering what, a lot of people are coming through these experiences, because I know you guys work with others as well, and you're watching people kind of move through, periods of more grace and ease where they're sort of coming to understand their experiences, and then other periods that are a little rougher where they're dealing with a lot of purification and having to make deep, deep changes in parts of their being that normally, as Gareth, you so beautifully described, that in that body, I'm still sleepwalking, that those who are sleepwalking never make those changes because they're not easy changes to make. And so, how is it that, even though many people are having this experience of awakening this time, you two have stepped up to the call of being guides and teachers and supports for others. So I was just kind of curious, like, what that part of the path looks like for you, and what's your inspiration for doing that, and also what that's like to be in that position of responsibility.
Would you like me to go?
Go, Gareth. We'll go back.
Okay. So after my awakening, I realized that there was a lot more, right? It wasn't just one shift and it's done, right? There was lots of different stages. And I started for about 2 years after my awakening, I didn't really speak about it. I didn't have spiritual friends. I wasn't in any spiritual communities. I just sort of went looking online to see what had happened here. And the first person I came across who made any sense to me was Adyashanti, who I would consider like the gold seal of what a teacher should be. And I was like, he's just such a lovely being. And I started to realize as I was listening to, I used to get his audiobooks. I was like, oh, this keeps going. It keeps unfolding. There's more. And I was just intuitively led to different teachers, and there was more shifts started happening. And eventually, I shifted into what's known as unity consciousness, and I had
Yeah.
the Kundalini awakening. The Kundalini went all the way up, um, and then I shifted a little bit later then into what's known as Brahman consciousness, and then Para Brahman, right? So it was
Mhm.
like this journey all the way back to where primordial consciousness came from, like the soul remembering itself all the way back to where it came from, to the ocean, right? The droplet traced its steps back to where it came from, outside of creation, and then it came back in. And when it came back in with these divine qualities. Like there was energies coming in that could work as a conduit for change here
Yes.
with the people I was working with. And I had already, by mistake, sort of by mistake, because I never wanted to be a teacher, I had been involved with another person who was building this community around guided meditations. He was very gifted, and he had created all these amazing guided meditations. And there was a group that had formed, and all of a sudden he just backed out. He just disappeared. And he was like, I don't want to do it anymore. And I
Huh.
was left with this group.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe we'll meet once a week. So we started meeting once a week. We started meditating. And then I started realizing that I was transmissive. Like people were telling me, oh, when we sit with you, there's something going on, there's a change. So that group that I had been sitting with had started to grow. Very small in the beginning, like 8 people. Then it went up, a year later it was 16. And it
Yeah.
just grew and grew and grew. And by the time my awakening kind of got to that place where I came back in, it was significantly, there was like 50 people turning up on a regular
Oh,
basis. And
that's
they
wonderful.
started asking me, could they work with me one on one to help them go through what I had gone through?
Yes.
So I discovered that there was energy, and the energy was like a field, and people could sit in the field and feel it, and it could make change in people's systems. But then I also discovered that I could use that energy sort of like a laser to do certain things. So sort of like what you do
Mhm.
with energy healing. But I guess the the sort of vein that I went down was I was using energy healing to help people awakening. So I I started bringing light down into people's consciousness, making the consciousness brighter and brighter, so it got to know itself more and more, and people started waking up. So I don't
Nice.
know how many people started waking up, but there was a lot. There was quite a lot. And I would work with them, weekly or twice a week. Sorry, once every 2 weeks, online. And I noticed that they were progressing. They were actually, some of them reached unity consciousness. Some of them had Kundalini awakenings. And that's pretty much what happened. It just got bigger and bigger. The groups grew. Um, and I mean, there's probably like over 100 people now turn up in my Zooms.
That's
Um,
wonderful.
yeah,
Beautiful.
and I mean, yeah, I wrote a book. Um, yeah, so I mean, the book helped as well. It brought people in.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. I really appreciate that you were able to see that essentially you were working within the field.
yeah,
And also your description of unity and then Brahman and then para Brahman. This is these terms I'm familiar with through the work of Davidya, right? David Buckland. And I'm just wondering, are you also referencing those terms from that
yes,
system? Yes. Okay, good.
yes.
Just so people
So
have a
so
reference for it. Yeah.
I came across David early on, and I bought his book, and I was trying to build up because so many different they all use different language around
Right,
these
that's the
different
thing.
states.
In this industry, there's not really a standard yet, and there
No, there's
are
nothing.
key people like David, who are trying to kind of get the lexicon put together so that we're all on the same page together. But yeah,
Yeah, it's like I had put my own one together, and I was taking bits from the TM, and I was
right.
taking bits from other traditions. But David's was just beautiful.
Yeah,
So
very detailed.
simple. His book was
Yeah,
beautiful, very detailed, but very simple, right? Just the
yeah,
seven
yeah,
stages, and I just
yeah.
really
And he
like that.
went with his mind. He went right in, so he knew what he was
Incredible.
talking about very clearly. Yeah, and consistently. Yeah.
Yes. So that's the model that I worked with was the
Yes.
Vidges. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful. That's beautiful. And God bless him for, creating that model and putting it out there for us to kind of help, create some stability in the process for everybody. It's really lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so,
Yeah.
okay, I think what I'd like to do, as I mentioned before we got started here, folks, was I thought it would be really fun to go more into the fine details of how the Gareth and Eva's teachings work. But I think before we go too far into that here with you, Gareth, let's hear from Eva again, if it would be all right.
Mm.
And also hear a little bit about Eva, how you, came to be in the position that you are, and, what inspired you, and how it is that you find yourself supporting people's awakening process and enlightenment and healing. You also do healing, yes? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I left off before. So I had the first shift into self-realization, and then quite steady moved forward to unity consciousness. And I have done a little bit of healing work before, but not so much. So basically, what I experienced was just a lot of unprocessed human trauma and stuck energies in my system and conditioning I haven't dealt with, because I also didn't see that it was there at that time.
Right.
I mean, I saw bits and pieces, but I didn't see a whole lot. And then when I had the unity shift, so the small self was basically ripped out of my chest. That's how it felt like. So I even felt like dying for a day or two, but it wasn't. Back then it was scary, but looking back, it was okay. And then just basically the mechanism that pushes all these emotions that we don't want to feel and all the patterns and all of that down just basically disappeared or opened up, and everything blew up in my face. So basically for
Right.
a time of 2 months, I felt terrible. So a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, depression. It was really, I really had a hard time. And then the experience started integrating, and also because the system is open, things just come up and they cleared by itself, or a big part of it. And then after a while, I realized, okay, I have the opening of the unity. So I experienced that for a few days, but then there are days where it's closed down again, it seems like. So I can't access that. So the human stuff just takes over. And then I kind of wanted to have the unity experience all the time. And then I started doing different things. So I worked with a healer for that. So I had a healer who helped me to clear past life influences and also a little bit of trauma from this lifetime. Then I did some sort of breath work that helped to also clear trauma out of the system. So I kind of did a lot of work in that time for a while to just clear the system more, so that the unity experience and the full experience of the self is just there all the time. Yeah. And that's when I learned a lot as well, right? And I work now with a lot of people who have these experiences, so who have realizations on the consciousness level, but they don't experience it all the time. And then the shift into Brahman happened. And then after a while, the Brahman is kind of, there's not much going on. It's just very empty for a while. And then after a few months, basically the human experience started to come back in. So just more of the humanness, the integration into the human experience, and also a transmission started to come in. So I was interested in healing before. So I kind of had the interest in that area. So I got initiated in Reiki and in Palawa healing. So a few of those modalities, but I didn't really practice it. Maybe a little bit, but it just never really picked up, So because my interest was really on my path and on moving forward, it was just the main interest. And I kind of wanted to help. So I wanted to do some kind of work where I can help people. But then eventually also this fell away. So this interest fell away. And then I saw it was actually just something that I wanted, like the ego wanted, right? So that fell away. And then there was just the Brahman happening. Then the transmission started to come in. And then the interest in helping people came in, but different. So it's not like I wanted to help people, but it's just like, it feels like there is just this task happening through my system now, or this, that's the best way I can describe it. And first it was just a transmission. So that came in, I started to sit with people and they started feeling changes in their system. So I kind of knew it's healing. So it was always my way. So the healing came in, and that the transmission has some healing qualities. And then I experienced that suddenly my hands started to move, in some sessions, and there were other sessions where information started to come in. And so it just basically unfolded by itself. So I never learned anything, or I didn't have a teaching or a teacher or anything in that area. So it just unfolded. And I did a lot of one-on-one sessions, like hundreds of one-on-one sessions. And in every session, I learned something more about the human system, how it functions, and the way I can work with it. And then I realized, okay, every system is on the area where I work, or on the layer where I work, is exactly the same. And I can just work with groups. So I don't have to work with one person. I can work with groups because it's even more efficient. It's more efficient. And also the group energy, of course, is a lot stronger. So I think, we dive deeper later, right? So
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's really beautiful. And I really identify with your story and experience, Eva, because the same happened for me. I wasn't really planning or thinking that I was ever going to heal somebody, but it just happened that it was meant to happen. So I wasn't really given a lot of choices about it. And I didn't really have, I did have a dear friend who knew about energy healing. He didn't have the perception that I had. He didn't see. He didn't see inside the body and all that. But he understood a lot of principles about energy healing, and he introduced the idea of energy healing to me and a lot of the language that went with it, because in the beginning there were just experiences and I didn't know what the experiences were. Like you both mentioned the word transmission, and I wanted to ask you both a little bit more about that, actually, the principle of transmission. But anyway, I relate to your experience, Eva. That's all, because like you, I kind of came across it and it was just like, oh, well, like the universe is just going to teach you how to do this now. It wasn't like I had, I went to some classes about it or something. It just happened like that. So thank you. It's very nice to hear that. It's kind of in common. Anyway, I did want to ask you, because in both of your stories, you use the word transmission, and it's, again, as we were saying earlier, there's not a big standard in our industry. And so I'd really like to know more about what your experience is with that concept, or with that process of transmission, and what that means to you, and how that actually works, how it unfolds for you. Is it possible you could share a few words about that with us? Thank you.
Absolutely. I guess, okay, so I'm going back to 2013. I went to Spain to see a teacher named Tom Campbell, who's a nuclear physicist, and he wrote a book called My Big Toe. I was a big fan of Tom Campbell. I absolutely love Tom, and he was a big part of my whole process, right? A lot of the times when I spoke about the being in the classrooms, it was with Tom. I would be there with Tom, and he would be teaching me. And I went to see Tom, and I sat with Tom as he did a lecture. He gave a lecture on his theory of everything, and I sat there for 5 days in Spain. And when I left, I was like, I am different. My fear is less. I had less fear. I was like, being around that person has done something to me, right? I didn't know what it was. I didn't feel anything, but I was different when I left. And as I was going through my awakening, right, one of the people I did talk to about it was my dad, right? I was talking to my dad. My dad actually came to see Tom Campbell. I brought him, it was his birthday at the time, and I brought him with me because he loved Tom. And he started going through this period of depression in his life, um, and anxiety. And I started trying to talk to him about where I was coming from, what had changed here in my system, right, and how it was. And I got to this stage where I was like, I cannot get to him. I can't reach him with words. And I was like, if only there was something I could do, where I could like give him a taste of what I am feeling, right? So I asked for it. I asked, and I again going back, it was I can't remember, 2018, maybe 2019. I was in Lumley Castle in Newcastle, United Kingdom, with Tom Campbell on another 5-day retreat. And I remember going back and I said to myself, give me something that I can give to people where I can give them a taste of what I'm experiencing. And all of a sudden, this really strange process came in. The breath dropped, my head dropped, what felt like my heart stopped, and my whole body just went lifeless. And I sat there and I was still there. And straight away, I got this feel. It was like the body was saying, "You're having a heart attack. Move, do something, move." And I said, "No, I'm staying." And all of a sudden, this big hand came in and it pushed on my chest and pushed and pushed and pushed. And then all of a sudden, the hand took away and it goes, "Now you can transmit your state to others." And I was like, "Oh wow, right." So there was a lot more that went on. And what had happened was I had gone through a Kundalini awakening, right? The Kundalini had gone all the way up into the brain. And now my Kundalini had turned into what's known as Shakti. So there was a field of Shakti around me. And when I would meditate with people, people could feel that transmission. They could feel the Shakti, the feminine. So we would meditate and I could amp it up and they could meditate and they would start to feel, they would get pulled into that state. So what I started to realize was that our consciousness, our separate consciousness were merging in these sessions. And then there was like a transfer, like a pathway for the energies and the experience of what I was having would go to those people. It could be stillness, it could be Shakti, it could be light, and they could pick up on it and it could create change in their systems. Um, so yeah, and I also went to a teacher and received a transmission, and I was like, oh, this is doing something here. This is changing something. And I remember a couple of days afterwards going, I am different. I went to people like Mother Mira, who's
Mhm.
who's like an Indian avatar, and being completely transformed after being.
Right.
Amma was another one. I went to see
Yeah.
Amma. I got a hug from Amma. I was like, these people are changing my awareness by being around them. Receiving their darshan. So that was how my work started.
Oh, that's so beautiful. So you talked about how you had this experience with Tom Campbell, and it was as if there was almost a physiological shift in the chest. Like you felt the hand there and it was pressing.
Oh
And it was like the
yes,
nervous
yes.
system itself was restructuring to some degree. That even the shape and the neural connections and everything was kind of restructuring itself. And then you mentioned having the Kundalini awakening, but did you have the Kundalini awakening before that
The
experience,
week
or
before, the week
oh,
before that,
the
the
week
a
before?
week, the week before,
Okay,
yeah.
so those two experiences were very close to each other and maybe
Yes,
part of the same transformation process that you went through.
no
Yeah, and
doubt.
then so then you're saying that your experience was that it kind of woke up a little bit more feminine energy in your being,
Mm,
and
yeah,
that when you were with people, you realized that there was a place where you merged, where your consciousness and their consciousness merged. And my thought was, is it that you created the merge, or is it that your awareness comes to a level of refinement where we are always one. We are always merged. We're always together, something like that. So that basically what you're doing is you're working from that deeper, more abstract level of consciousness where you are awake to the reality that we are connected. And so when you're with people, that's what you're doing, is you're bringing your awareness deep into that deep level where you know that you're connected with them. They might not quite be awake to that yet, but then when you come to that level, you bring in that Shakti energy, that kind of waking it up, livening it up, activating it, you could say. And as you activate that level in yourself, which is the level where you're connected with them, that level of them also activates and they also experience it. And so they walk away going, oh, wow, something happened.
Correct. So back then I didn't understand it, right? But since they all exist within what I am, right? Yeah. Same way you exist within what I am. And I exist within what you are. And it's consciousness talking to consciousness about the evolution of consciousness. Right.
Right.
It's like this is what it is. Exactly. Yeah. You put it very beautifully, Dorothy.
My buddy Nick used to say, this was my friend who is a monk who used to help me, even though he didn't see what I saw. And he used to say, it's God godding with God. Oh, look, God's godding with God again. but it's so beautiful. And I think that the thing is that in this world, and this is what I've been discovering lately, is that because of the trauma that our collective field has been through over the last few years with the global event whose name shall not be mentioned because I might get censored off of YouTube if I mention the name of it. But anyway, that event created something like a collective trauma. And as we know, as we've been speaking of today, even the collective trauma will often give rise to a spiritual awakening. And so we are in a time of great tenderness and a spiritual awakening on our earth. And for a lot of people, that translates to going back to church. Like a lot of, at least this is what we're seeing in the US. I don't know if you're seeing it so much in Europe, but I know that here in the US, it's really a big thing that's happening. It was a very kind of tangible, measurable thing that people are returning to churches. And I feel that in the Western spiritual tradition, there's some, I would say maybe a lack of understanding and skepticism about the types of awakening experiences that are well defined and have been well recorded in the Eastern traditions. And because they don't center around the event of the coming of Christ to our world and his death and resurrection, all that, because they don't center around that, there are a lot of very powerful, important speakers in the Western tradition who will call the work that we're doing bad names. They'll define it as something that's maybe not good for people and not well for people. And I feel that the truth is bigger than this. But I also feel that we're at a time when there's so much interest in awakening to understanding of what's happening that we need to find a path that integrates and brings together the traditions of the West and the East, because as much respect as I have for the Western traditions, they have also over the centuries gotten corrupted at times as well by, bad players, people who are using their positions to exploit people and such. So, it's a messy, it's a bit messy, but that's why I feel that there's a great value in us sitting together and speaking directly and really coming in with a microscope and looking exactly what is precisely happening in the spiritual awakening process that you guys are helping to facilitate, because I feel that it is blessed and pure and beautiful and important and necessary and part of the changes that must take place at this time for our world to move forward in a graceful manner. So Anyway, I don't want to dominate the conversation. I want to hear what you guys have to say. So let's go to Eva. And maybe, Eva, you can share with us a little bit about your process and what your experience is when you're working with people, and about the concept of transmission and what that feels like. And, maybe the first time you experienced it, and how that unfolded for you.
Okay. So basically, when I started meditating with Gert's group, from the beginning on, I was exposed to transmission. So I basically just know that way of working, or that way of meditating anyways. So I meditated with Gareth, with Mother Mira, and some other teachers who were carrying a transmission. And for the first, let's say, 3 months, I didn't feel anything. So the nervous system, because you were talking about it before, it just wasn't refined. So my understanding today is, like you said before, it just needs refinement. And when you sit in transmissions over and over again, because they work on a cellular level, they just refine the nervous system. So they expand the possibility to feel, to perceive energy, so in multiple different ways, because it also depends on how the system perceives energies. And also it's able to hold higher levels of consciousness then, because you can have openings, for example, but if the nervous system is not ready, it will close down again, right? So anyways, so I started to feel, after a while, I don't know, a few weeks, just a rush of energy coming through my system. And then a few weeks later, another time. So I knew there was something to it. I wasn't just sitting in silence, so there was something more happening. And then after a while, I just started to feel energies, or I felt the transmission coming through my system. I saw lights, I had visions in the beginning. So now I know it's part of the clearing of the system, when you have these experiences. But it was very exciting and beautiful, because something is happening. And this is what I love about transmission so much. First of all, they accelerate the process so much, like you're so fast when you connect every day. And also you get your own experiences. So you don't need to, you can, of course, read books about Western and Eastern tradition and all of that, what you were talking about. But here you just get your own experience, and you can make your own sense of all of that, right?
Yes.
So you don't have to listen to something somebody else says, so you can experience it for yourself. And basically the transmissions, they just help me to move forward in a very fast way. So through all these levels of consciousness in such a short time, like 3.5 years, it was just because of the transmissions, also because of the healing and clearing work, because that's necessary, that you see the opening. And then when it started to come in for me, I knew already what it was, and I just started to work with it because I already had an understanding of it. And right now, the transmission I work with, so I was shown that in a meditation. It's basically, it contains the information of truth. So when you sit in that transmission, truth comes in. And then it transforms your system on a cellular level towards your highest truth. So everybody's different. Everybody has a different truth, but that's what you're exposed to. And then it also helps you to access your true nature. And this is what I love about it, because I use it now in my healing sessions. So I can work with it. I can manipulate the energies, and I can distract certain parts out of it. For example, when I have something specifically healing the physical body, I can distract the part that just works on the physical body, or there are other parts that, for example, bring in emotions like joy, or access to the true nature and stuff like that. So I can just work with that and bring people into that experience. For example, the people can already experience their true nature in a healing session. So then they already know, okay, that's how it feels like. That's what I'm working towards. So you don't have to shift to Brahman to know that you're a being and not like only the human, that you're beingness. So you can already experience that. And this is basically what's happening. The transmission is showing me certain ways how to help people to access that what's already there, but because they just can't experience it yet, because there's still just stuff in the way. And then at the same time, I help to clear layers. You can only clear layer after layer, then it has to be integrated and manifest into everyday life experience. But then, they already know what to look for and what to work towards. And the experience of the human just gets a lot nicer, because, I experienced in unity that there is only the present moment, and there is no past and future because they started to break down these mechanisms. And with this work, you can already experience that, for example, before, because how do you say it? I already changed the system towards that so that they have this experience already before that as well, because the nice way of living comes in higher levels of consciousness when a lot of human stuff is already broken down and a lot of the mechanisms that are holding us small and in the container, and this can already be worked on before. So that's basically what the transmission is showing me to do, and information is coming through. So exactly what people need, that information is coming through, and I'm just sharing. I think similar like you do, right? You see something and you share it. This is also what's happening.
Yeah, beautifully said, Eva. Beautifully said. As you were speaking, there were just so many points. I was just thinking, oh yes, this, oh yes, that. But the one that I'm left with after all of that is recently my husband was watching a near-death experiences. He was very interested in these near-death experiences. And one man was saying that and a lot of people who have them say that it's very common to go back and to see your life through your own eyes. You see everything, the life review, you see what you did, but then you see what you did through the eyes of others as well. But then you also see each of the moments of your life through the eyes of the divine, from the perspective of God. And as you were speaking, Eva, I was thinking about how that self-awareness that you were saying wakes up during the transmissions, and how people realize their pure potential is like seeing themselves through the eyes of God, through the eyes of the divine. And the fact that we could have that experience now, we don't have to die, right? But that in the living form, consciousness has the potential to see one's own actions at any given moment. And I mean, Gareth, you described this also so very beautifully when you were talking about your awakening in the gym. I can only imagine what it must have been like for other people in the gym to see this guy working out, and then he sits down and just starts crying, It's really something. But anyway,
it was very early in the morning and there wasn't many people around,
okay.
So I was quite lucky.
Just the teenager.
I kept my reputation intact, Dorothy.
But really, but that the fact that we, when one has that level of awakening, then whatever we say and do, we experience it through the filter of our own being, but we also experience it through the filter of those around us, right? And just as people in their life reviews do. And then it can be taken to yet another level. Yeah, go ahead. You're going to say something about that, Gareth.
Well, what I was going to say was what you were mentioning there. I very recently just watched a program called Jury Duty, right? And this, I don't know if you came across it, right? Really, really fascinating, right? So it's kind of a comedy, right? But it's set up in the way that it's all false, right? The judge is fake, all the jury members are fake.
I saw a version
from
of it.
One person, right? One person who doesn't know, and there's like all behind the scenes. There's people with cameras and computers. They're orchestrating everything, and at the very end, right? It's almost like he's given a life review, right? They're showing him all the good things that he's done and how he handled people and how caring he was. And I was like, this is like the awakening process, right? It's kind of like the Truman Show, right? You're going around in this dream, everything's kind of fake. It has this fake feeling. And at the very end, you realize that there's more. There's teams behind the scenes working to orchestrate lots of things. And then you get shown it all back on a screen.
Oh, wow.
So I really, I thought that was a beautiful
that's amazing
program. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, I saw a few episodes of that and it was fascinating. It was really fascinating because the main character is the only one who doesn't know that the whole thing is a bunch of actors and fake. And and yet they put that person in situations where they have to make choices and decisions.
Yes.
And based on their choices and decisions, that will also kind of shape the way the story unfolds in the upcoming sessions. And so it's really quite amazing, and it illustrates the I would say, the coordination between our individual choices and decisions in self and the cosmic level where everything is being orchestrated, on a very kind of grand scale. And Eva, your point about living in the present moment and the now, I feel like drives that home because, because of the intimacy of the relationship between the individual level of self that comes up and actually faces this present moment in the world, interfacing with that divine level of creation, we do as individuals have some autonomy. There's some level or degree of autonomy over the way things unfold and show up. And I feel as if this is one of the key components between those who look upon the work that we are doing as a blessing and beautiful, and those who look upon it without fully understanding and wondering if maybe it's not sacred or something. Because that's that point of, well, how much of the changes, like the way the nature of the transmissions shows up. Eva, you beautifully described how, you can cultivate, whether the transmission is going to come up to support some emotional growth or development, or whether it's going to come up in a way that helps the person's physiology, and, very, very like fine tuning. But as you describe it, it seems as if it's kind of like an individual choice to some degree. It feels like, you're experiencing it, but you're kind of leading off of cues that you get from the people who come for your help, right? Of, well, is what's needed for this person right now a physical healing? Is it an emotional healing? Do they need some transmission of knowledge, for their minds, something like that? But it's also orchestrated from a level of cosmic wisdom and development as well, right? And so it's like an integrated dance or something, the two sides of self. I'm just trying to kind of break it down and understand it for the audience. Yes, go ahead, Eva.
I totally agree. So when you talk to a person first, or the group session has like a topic, kind of what to look for, but then the transmission comes in and it's information, right? So it's just information, and I just see this information, I can read it, and then I just know what to do. So it's not something I am doing, but I see, okay, for example, the energy of joy needs to come in at the moment. So I'm just saying, okay, the energy of joy is coming in, and then I facilitate that. So I hold the space for that. So I always get the information, what I need to do and how to assist the transmission. And that's what I'm doing. So this is actually what you share. Right. So on the one hand, yes, it's us, but then there's also like the cosmic, how you call this, showing us what's best. So I always work for the highest good of people. So that's basically what you shared. Yeah. So I agree.
Yeah. Beautifully put.
It's my experience too. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because I feel that, from the Western tradition, if the work isn't done completely and exclusively in the name of Jesus and through that tradition, it's considered, well, it's probably something bad. It's probably not sacred. It's probably not holy. But I think another point that came up that I really honor in both of you is that each person has a intimate, personal, one-on-one relationship with that level of divinity within them, whether they are awake to it at this time, whether they're sleepwalking or whether they're awake, it's there. And so basically what you're doing is you are activating the field. You're activating the field to become lively at that point where the connection or the intimacy of that relationship is most potent, or most, I would say the potential of it to awaken is the greatest, where the laws of nature that support its awakening is the greatest. And so in doing that, it's really the people who come as students to you are the ones who are, it's their personal relationship that forms the blueprint by which their experience unfolds. Would you say that is about right? Yes. Gareth?
Yeah. So what I would say is the field becomes organized around me, right? It's like it becomes organized, and it can create change in somebody. So the way I see it is, I'm just like a conduit. I'm like a piece of plumbing. I don't get involved as much. There's a number of different aspects coming in. I have the truth, the Shakti, the light. And it's a little bit like what Eva says, like I can like pull strands from that column that's coming down to do different things in people. So it's like the the field is sort of diffuse. So it's like there, right? And people can sit in it and benefit from it. But it's like it needs something to make it become organized, almost like pinpoint it down into a laser to do particular changes in person's system. So, I mean, Eva's very skilled at what she does. How I work with it is like I kind of like try and trigger awakening through the individual, um, through that, and bring the body online as well, right? The nervous system, and that's the Shakti. So the Shakti brings, so we can awaken through the perceptions, right? We can have the change in how we perceive the world, but we also have this human part, and I try to also bring the human involved so the body can have the experience of enlightenment. So it can get to feel what all this is, the bliss, the love, the connection. It's all happening in the body, in the nervous system. And I find that the Shakti really refines the nervous system over time, sitting in that feminine
Oh, Gareth,
transmission.
that's really, really interesting. Do you, is, if it's not too much, do you think you could describe to me even a little bit more detail how the Shakti interacts or interfaces with the nervous system to give rise to a refined effect in the nervous system? I mean, that really fascinates
Okay,
me because that's
yes.
beautiful.
Okay, so my understanding is that we have energy centers, right? We have the seven major chakras, and then we have small little minor chakras known as the nadis,
Mm-hmm.
72,000 of them all around our
Mm-hmm.
bodies, right? And the way
Mm-hmm.
I describe it to people is if I'm looking down on a map and I see them as cities, right? Seven major cities, and then I see towns and villages, and I see them all being connected with roads, right? Major
Right.
motorways, smaller minor roads, and the Shakti starts
Meridians.
to travel. It wakens up in the system. The Shakti starts moving out through that person's system, moving down the little roadways, finding blockages like a fallen tree. All of a sudden, it starts working on it, trying to move it, gets it out of the way, gets down to the next little town, connects it. Now there's a connection between the two, right? And it does that throughout the whole body, right? The whole nervous system um, gets worked on and connected. And that's an ongoing process, right? I don't know if that ever really ends, right? I think as long as we're in a body, there's some sort of little blockages or parts of us that haven't fully been cleared. But that's what the Shakti does in my and another one of the things is the intelligence. If it cannot get through some of the blockages, you'll notice people moving into mudras. So you'll see people like connecting fingers and placing. And what's happening there is the energy might come up against a blockage, right? And you might see someone having what's known as kriyas, right? They start twitching, and that's the energy hitting a blockage. And then what it'll do is if it can't get through, yeah, and I've experienced this in my own system, it will then move. It'll go, okay, we can't get through this way. Let's find another pathway around. And it will actually move the body into mudras. The head might move forward, and it will connect a new way and come in this way, down through the arm, back in, and work on it from a different side. And I had that when my Kundalini went up. It got up as far as the neck and it got stuck. And there's a knot, a large knot at the back of the neck, and it couldn't get past it. And it kept hitting off it, bing, bing, like a ping pong ball, just going back and forwards. And it
Mm.
just couldn't get through. And then all of a sudden it abandoned that way, that method. It was like, okay, we can't get through. Let's divert, right? And all of a sudden, the energy came out around my face and the back of the head. And instead of going up, it went around and it came up into the head and drilled down into my brain
Oh,
because it
that's
couldn't
so
get around the
interesting.
blockage. Yeah.
Oh, amazing,
So
amazing.
it's got a complete intelligence all of its own. It's just
Oh,
incredible.
beautiful. So, would you say that then that the main purpose of Shakti in the awakening process is for the sake of purification?
Yes. Yes,
That
definitely.
that's
Yeah.
what Shakti is for. That's why it's here, and that's why we utilize it and
Yeah, well,
with it.
it's the energy that makes up everything, right? And
Mhm.
everybody has it in them, right? But in every person, right, it's condensed as their Kundalini energy, right? It's at the base of the
Mm.
spine, and that's your basically like your power plant that beats your heart, grows your hair, it does all of that.
Mm.
But its goal is to rise through all the centers, and Shiva and Shakti merge in the crown. They a divine union. So there's a beautiful plan.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So it has this role of influencing or affecting purification at a physiological level, but ultimately its goal is that union on the spiritual.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
that's so interesting. It's so
yeah.
beautiful.
And it animates consciousness, right? Because we
Uh-huh.
can
Right.
awaken to emptiness. And uh, awakening to emptiness, isn't that amazing? It's like, okay,
Right.
right, the mind is quiet, the ego's not as big, but it's flat and it feels empty. Whereas the Shakti gives it depth and it gives it
Mm, mm.
love, and it's like, oh, the richness and the fullness.
I was just going to ask then what would be the relationship between Shakti, if you've got that sort of infinite silence of the mind, but it has sort of a flatness, but then what would be its relationship to the infinity of the divine love? That's also an infinity. It's also an infinity, that quality of love. And would you say then that the Shakti is the conduit for that? Or would you say that the divine love is the energy that creates a condition whereby the Shakti can flow effectively, like trust? Like when you feel loved, then you can
Yeah.
relax and say, okay, I'm on the lap of mother, I can trust now. So I'm just wondering which
Yes.
of those two
So
is the
so
second
it
one.
is mother, right? When
Yeah.
when you feel when you start feeling that field of Shakti in your system and around you, it's mother's love, right? It's the divine feminine. You're held, you're loved, you're home no matter where you are. But it's like the divine union. It's like the two lovers meeting Shiva's consciousness, and Shakti is that divine um presence, right, that animates all of our creation. The two of
Right,
them
right,
wanted that union.
right, right. Beautiful, beautiful. Eva, you were saying that you found after a while that the experiences or the purifications that people had to go through were very, very similar and became easier to work with groups in a way because people really are dealing with sort of common patterns of imbalances. And when we're talking about feeling oneself in the safety and the security of that divine mother love, then the question is, well, why does mother love me so much? And the answer that comes is, well, because mother sees me for who I really, really, really am in a way that maybe I don't see myself. And I was just wondering how that vision of one's pure potential, that full potential that the individual can rise into or could integrate, then becomes the form that is responsible for the flow of that love. And so, when you were describing your process of transmission, you were saying that that's what awakens for people. And I was just thinking how that experience of letting go of what people think they are or believe themselves to be, and being able to embrace or accept a much larger vision of their potential, actually, how that changes, how the transmission helps to soften the changes that need to take place in the nervous system in order to accommodate that bigger vision. And I don't know if my question is too open-ended or maybe not open-ended enough or
I'm
whatever.
just saying what pops up.
Yeah. Okay.
The answer. So basically, when you talk about the pure potential, or I just call it the beingness or the true nature, that's there all the time in our system, anyways, right?
Yes.
And just the human stuff is piled on top. And basically, with the transmission and with doing the healing work, you just remove one conditioning, one trauma after the other. And then there might be already like glimpses, you have glimpses already of your true nature, especially also when you meditate, in deep meditation, sometimes you can already access that area. So the peace, the silence, the infinite, the divine part of your system. So that's always there. And basically in the healing session, what's happening is I help to open that up for people. And in that space, then I see, because it's like the high vibration, so the extreme high vibration is coming up in the system, and then I see the low vibrational stuff. So I see the anger, the fear. So this is basically what's happening on the base. So there is a lot of stories. So a lot of stories why anger is stored in the system. So from childhood on, when emotions started to being stuck in the system, so there are times when they are still passing through, but then there is a time we can't fully process them through anymore. For example, at school, we have to be silent, we have to sit, whatever parents say, we have to behave. And then they get stuck, and with other emotions as well. And then they're not getting fully processed. And this happens over and over again through our whole lifetime. So there's just a lot of stuff piled up. And in these sessions, when you're already connected to your true nature, basically the light is there. And then in the light, you see the lower vibrational stuff. And then it's just very easy to remove it. I just remove it as I remove the fear, the anger. So always on the emotional level. This is where I work. So the story doesn't matter so much. It's all about the emotion. And there can be always also, for example, emotional influence from ancestors. So there can be an influence there as well. This is also where we can clear and cut just the energy influence. So not anything else, but just that, also from past lives. So I'm just shown past lives. So there's like a little story happening, why an energy got stuck in that past life and why the person in that past life lived with that energy. And this life is basically this energy is influencing the current life experience. And this can be also healed and cleared. And by doing that, the system just gets lighter. And then you have a higher vibration. You raise your vibration in that session. And basically, your whole energy field is different. So after a session, you've fully changed. The first, of course, the energy field, and then it manifests in the body, and then in your life experience. And if you do this a few times, you do it over and over again, and maybe you totally stick to it, you can totally change your life experience in such a short time. But always the aim towards awakening, towards a higher truth. So not what the ego wants, but what what the truth is, or what your true nature is and what it wants. So always the aim is always towards that. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not sure if I fully answered your question.
No, it's a good question. I mean, from my perspective, I'm bringing the questions just because these are things that I'm also thinking about, right, at this time. And one of my thoughts about that is that if you're able to help people bypass the stories and get more down to the emotional level and deal just directly with the feelings like that. And so they're dealing with the truth of what they're experiencing emotionally, which tends to be more without filters. Then going through the emotional experiences becomes part of the truth. And the reason I brought it up is one of the things that I've been looking at lately is that the vision of the divine, that vision of the full potential or the pure potential of the soul, is bigger than we have the hardware to comprehend. How big is that potential? Is really, really, really big. It's like the mother looks at her infant child and she sees this child. I remember my second son was born, and we had his chart done. And the chart said, oh, this guy is fierce. He is going to slay enemies right and left. And I looked at this tiny little pink boy. He's just this big little boy, right? And I'm like, fierce? You call this fierce? I mean, this is just cute, But sure enough. But anyway, but at the time, the vision was so big and the body was so small. Do you know what I'm saying? And so I feel that even as adults and as individual souls that are, on this path, we're born as humans on Earth. We're not born on some other planet right now. Or I mean, unless of course you believe in alternate and parallel lifetimes and all that. But that gets very complicated and messy. So rather than going into the messy bit there, I just want to say, as we experience that we're here, that vision is so big that in itself, it has the potential to blow out the circuitry. It has the potential to, if you really, really grasp it fully, it's so big that it could overwhelm the nervous system. And so I honor the fact that your ability to work by going down past the storylines, for example, is a more efficient way of addressing the issues. But I also am looking at the possibility that just simply acknowledging and accepting those boundaries, limitations, weaknesses, those areas in the self where the emotions got blocked, is a way of creating a counter resonation that makes it a little easier to see the bigness. That if it's just the bigness with nothing to balance it or mitigate it, that it's too easy to blow out the system. But that if there's an element of, yes, well, I am that precious, the preciousness and the fullness and the belovedness of my nature is so, so big. But I am also here in this messy world, right? I'm also part of the messiness of this world and the fact that our bodies are so small that within the context of the universe, we're smaller than a grain of sand on the shore of the ocean. I mean, we're really, really we're coming through these very tiny little nervous systems that, as you guys are pointing out, the nervous system has this phenomenal potential to do these incredible things and to be a vehicle for awareness to expand to infinity. And yet it's just little. It's just sitting in this little tiny body, and that somehow there's maybe I'm just offering, maybe asking you what you think about your thoughts on this, that there's part of what happens is there's kind of an integration between the individual smallness and the messiness and the sort of those qualities that make an individual the individual, and their individual tasks that have been bestowed upon, gifts and tasks that have been bestowed upon each one of us to live out in this lifetime, that are unique. Each person has a unique path that is there to create a counterbalance to a level of love that is so immeasurable and so profound that it's virtually inaccessible for the nervous system in its fundamental condition as one steps onto that path. That so much change needs to happen in the nervous system. And maybe part of that is to embrace and accept and allow the smallness to also be there, so that it kind of creates a sort of a contrast or a system that allows the individual to open up. And the reason I mention it is because from the Western tradition, from the great spiritual souls who have given their lives in the most pure and beautiful way to their development and theosis, which is the union with God through the Western tradition, they use the word humility. And I'm still looking at that word. I think there's more to that word than we normally think of. Again, terms, need to be defined more precisely, but they use that word humility, that it's the humility that opens the door to access to the pure love of the divine, the full love of the divine. So anyway, I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on that, because for me, that's kind of one of the things I'm looking at right now. And I really love and respect you both so much. And I'd love to hear your, any reflections that you have on it, because I see how it fits.
I mean, you just divulged quite a lot. And I really, my attention span, but I'll do my best, right? It's because we are like just a speck of dust. We are so small and minuscule, and I mean our bodies, like, yeah. So you talk about that nature of being, I don't know, humble, right? Yeah. And I always look at Adi Ashanti, right? He's just the most humble, sweet. I love it. I just love his approach. And also, right, you spoke about the awakening process, right? Really having to take time to work through our physiology, right? Bec and I know what that feels like, right? Because I've been blasted, like absolutely blasted into these like really great awakenings, right? Where it feels like I can't function, I can't hold this, my nervous system, my container isn't big enough to hold these divine forces, right? And then what happens is the because the nervous system can't, it closes back down, the aperture closes back down, and then we start our process of purification, of expansion, of embodiment, and that takes time, right? It took me 2 years, right, to really to get to grips with my first awakening. And each time I would open up, I would my container got bigger, right, and it felt like I would be put under pressure, expanded, expanded, and then all of a sudden, what would happen? I would feel like I can't take anymore, and then it would let off, and then the vessel was greater again. So the next time I could handle more, right?
Mm.
The first of all, it was a thimble, then it was an egg cup, then it was a teacup, and then a bucket, and then a swimming pool, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger. Um, but yeah, the humility. Like you're not doing any of this, right? It's not us. It's something that just awakens through us and wants to have that experience. And I mean, you also mentioned the gifts, right? It's like they are gifts. We can't develop these by ourselves, right? They are bestowed upon us. When about a week after I had that first awakening in the gym, I was sat on the sofa and I started to have this download, right? These packets of information started coming, and they started communicating, saying that the work that you're doing at the moment isn't your true work. I was running a business. I had a nutritional company, an e-commerce company. I was like, I've put 13 years of my life into this. What do you mean? And it was like, your real work is going to be working with the energy in the spine. And at the time, I had no clue what that meant. I had
Wow.
no clue, no clue. I was like, I went off, I started looking up acupuncture and chiropractor and stuff like that. I didn't know, no clue. And it never, and then it told me that I needed to stop eating meat. It was like, you need to stop eating meat because the energies are stuck. There's like, and it showed me the
Hmm.
pools along the back of my spine. I was like, the pools aren't connected because of the animal meat. And I'm not saying
Hmm.
that there's not people can't eat meat. It's just for me, that's what I was told, that I
Right.
needed to stop eating animal products. And the next day I went vegan. And it was like I was being divinely guided. I was being
Yes.
put on a path. I was being told that this was going to be my work.
Yes.
And, I don't think it happened straight away, but 2 or 3 years down the line, all of a sudden I'm working with the energy in the spine. So
Right.
there's a greater plan. It has nothing to do with us. It really
Yeah.
doesn't.
Oh, it's
Um,
beautiful.
yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. You gave me a lot there, a lot of information. So I don't know if I covered it.
Well, I no, I really, really appreciate your response. It's beautiful, and it reminds me that my husband's been reading the lives of the saints, of the Christian saints, and these monks, they almost all are vegetarian. In fact, we were just at a place called Saint Anthony's Monastery, which is one of the biggest Orthodox monasteries certainly in the US, probably the biggest, and they're all vegetarian. That's part
Mm.
of it. It also goes there, and so like I love it that we can find these little common threads, these common points. The experience of that deep, flat, absolute, unbounded nature, the mind. This is also an experience that's found in all the different traditions, and then that becomes activated through that infinite love in the heart. It also activates this, and then that's also part of these traditions. And it doesn't matter whether you're looking at an Eastern tradition or a Western tradition. And I think that these are the points that we need to kind of focus on, like to awaken, because
Yeah.
our world is awakening. Our world is awakening, and
Yes.
we want to support that awakening to be really divinely. We want that level of divine support to be the guiding principle behind the transformations and changes that occur in our world at this time. And as long as there's still kind of a separation where the Christians and the Western on one side are looking to the Eastern going, oh, well, that's devil worship over there. And the Eastern looks to the Christian and says, well, the Christians are responsible for a lot of, destruction of tribal peoples and this, that, and the other, and so and the thing is that everybody's still running to them. They're running to the Western and they're running to the Eastern. And we need to find that level of unity between them. And I didn't mean, honestly, for our discussion today to be center around that particularly, although I do feel that it is one of the most prevalent energies that's activating right now at this exact time that we're having our talk today in the world right now.
Well, Dorothy, just to I've noticed a little bit, especially around my YouTube videos, I'll get these, and they seem to be like Christian fundamentalists who are like, oh, this is the devil work, right? This is, anything energy, anything esoteric. It's the work of the devil.
Yeah, and the thing is, I really do. I know, and I know, we know, and so do the people who are truly questioning their own religious convictions in the West as well as the East. One knows when you've come to the truth with a capital T. And, Eva, that's where I also really appreciate your presentation, because, you're coming back to that. You mentioned it as you were describing your process, how it's truth, the big truth, the truth that people know from within themselves, that they know through, like you were describing, Gareth, your path was unfolded for you. It came through these synchronies and these moments where things just happened, and you knew that it was the truth, and you knew that you had to step onto it, and it wasn't like you were really given a lot of choice. I mean, you could have taken the choice, and I certainly did in my own path. There were times when I was younger, started when I was quite young, when I was still like 5 or 6, living in my parents' home. It was like, you need to go do this thing. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that thing. Forget it. I resisted it. I resisted through my teenage years. I resisted it through my 20s, my early 20s. And somewhere around in my 30s, it started to hit me that, like, I need to do this thing, and I had been, and it was there for me waiting, being patient. But when it's the truth and it's supposed to happen, it does unfold but it is up to us as individuals also to be willing to step, because I can imagine, Gareth, it took a lot of faith on your part to give up a business that you had been successfully running for 13 years for something that didn't even make sense to you. Oh my goodness. It takes a lot of faith. It takes willingness.
I knew though, it was a trusting. It was just like, okay. And I watched my business rumble. My dad worked for me, my partner worked for me, my brother worked for me. They all lost their jobs. I lost a lot of money. I lost shop after shop. I didn't care. I was just like, okay, this is, I just knew that everything was going to be fine.
Amazing. That's really beautiful. It's a great example of being humble, really letting go, and just realizing that, there's a larger truth here that I need to honor and respect. And it's not about individual idea.
Dorothy, my mind was running that business, and my rational mind was trying to come up with all of these strategies and systems and ways of keeping it going, and it was failing all of the time. I mean, it did really well for a long time, and then in the end, it was like, no matter what I do, this is going to fail, right? It's going to just fall apart because I'm going against what I'm meant to be doing. So it was just a process of, okay, just letting go, and it's going to be painless. Yeah.
Eva, did you have an experience like that at all, where you were going, I guess you described it a little bit when you were at university, and so that you were going on that path and it seemed like you were successful and good, but somehow it just wasn't working. Did you have a critical moment like that where it turned around and you had to let go of a lot of?
Yeah, I mean, not really, because I was willing to let go of everything anyways, because nothing had any worth to me, nothing, I didn't care about anything, even though I was working towards the law degree, and then I, got it, and then I got the job and stuff, but nothing meant anything to me anyway. So it was very easy for me to let go. And I didn't put in so much work like Gareth did, right? It's definitely different to be an employee or to be employed. So it's also easier to let go. No, so this, the openness of just wanting to move forward and just wanting to see what's what the spiritual path has in place. It was just, the drive was so strong that I just left everything behind and I didn't really care. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Beautiful. So you had that already, that humility. Yeah.
Yeah. But I wanted to say something about your discussion before. And that's what I love about working with the transmission. So what Gareth and I do, you will start to empower yourself. So you get access to your true nature. The identification with the small self starts dissolving, right? And then you get access to your intuition and all of that. And then your truth just comes forward. And then you just know for yourself what's good for you and what not, and in which direction to go, and that you're trusting, that you guided and so on. And this is what I love about this path. So it's not like anybody telling people, oh, this is that way, and you have to do it that way, and so on. So it's basically empowering people to find their own path and their own power and go towards wherever they need to go. And that's what I love about it, because this is also what I experienced. And then you can't be manipulated. I don't really care what East or West then traditions say. I don't even know a lot about it, because I just know what I experience and I know my truth and I follow that. And this is just what I'd like to help people to have that, because this is just the best thing to have in a life experience, right? To just know your own navigation, know where to go and what to do and what's best for you. So yeah.
Yes.
And that's why I love this work.
Yes. Yes, sweetheart. Yes. I think you really nailed it. I think you nailed that spot. That's the piece that is the integrative piece that brings together the sort of challenges that people are facing right now, when they're feeling like, oh, we've been through this whole huge collective trauma. We need to find our way into a more spiritual place, but where to look? Where do I go? Do I go here? Do I go to the east? Do I go to the west? And all the east and west are kind of looking at each other going, no, I'm better and you're better and all that. And then, but that point of integration, where the intimacy of the relationship between the individual and the divine is so clear and is so, I would say, orchestrated through that infinite divine love, that the individual just feels safe to accept the truth as it comes, a big truth, a very big truth, and able to accept it, and also not get too overwhelmed by that bigness of the truth. I think that for a lot of people, one of the things that causes those blockages over time is that even the truth itself can sometimes be a lot for the nervous system to take on. And so
but just something, what I experienced with Gareth's transmission and also with mine is that it always just comes in the base and in the amount we can handle at that time. Yes. So it was never overwhelming. It was never that I felt, oh, I'm totally out of it and I have no idea what's going on. I mean, there were like 1 or 2 days all in all, but in general, it just comes in exactly in the amount how we need it at the moment. So when we begin, it's a little bit less. And also, of course, the system can't even handle more. It can't, like the nervous system, right? It can't hold more. And then over time, it's more and more, but it's always in the amount. It's always for our highest good and the amount for our, how, what's the best word to describe it? Yeah, how we can handle it also in a nice and balanced way. I mean, of course, there can be times
where you are.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So, of course, there can be times when you do too many transmissions and too much work. Okay, it feels a bit overwhelming, but then anyways, okay, maybe I should stop for a day or two or give it a break, So, yeah, it meets you where you are. And this is also something so precious about this, because you don't need to be scared to be overwhelmed and that there's too much happening for you. Yeah.
Beautiful. It's beautiful. Yeah. So it's increasing the sensitivity to the limitations and boundaries in the nervous system also, at the same time that it's increasing the sensitivity to the presence of the potential, that infinite potential that's in the soul also at the same time. I think that answers that question that I had. I'm pretty sure that nails it right there, is that what's happening with the transmissions is that both the awareness of the needs of the body and the awareness of the expanding integration of the potential happens simultaneously. so that they work together to allow the progress forward to just be like steady and then steady and then steady and then the next one and then just exactly to the need of whatever the body has at that moment.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
and the human experience. So, and
Yes.
also the human experience. So that integrates very well into the experience. Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you both so
Amazing.
much. Yeah. Yeah. I feel as if there was a little bit, these were questions that I felt were, kind of there and that people are really wanting to know right now, are kind of at the forefront of people's experience of the largest level of the collective that I could find through my own awareness at this time. So I just so deeply appreciate that you two have come here together. We've come together, and that you would share your expertise, and based on your direct experience, which makes it very authentic, very authoritative, and just the years that you've put in helping people is absolutely amazing. So Gareth and Eva, thank you so very much for being with me today. I hope people enjoy watching, and we'll look forward to sharing very soon. Yeah. Oh, maybe before we stop, before we end, if you'd just like to offer a word to people of the best way to contact you or reach you, or hook up with your programs or something like that. If you'd like to share that with the audience.
Eva, you can go first.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, I have a website. It's www.em-healing.com. And there is a lot of information. And basically, I work with small groups, and I offer a free meditation every Thursday at 9 o'clock Central European time. But you feel like they convert on my website. So everybody's welcome to join. If you just want to experience the transmission I work with and the way I work with, that's a good place to just tap into that. And yeah, I have a YouTube channel as well. It's also called EM-Healing, where I have a lot of YouTube videos, so like short healing videos, longer healing videos, guided meditation. So I started doing guided meditation with energy work, so that people really enjoy it. That's basically what I can share. So Gareth.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I have a website called truespiritualawakening.eu. And very similar, I have like a free Zoom meditation every Tuesday and Friday at 9 p.m. UK time, which is in 45 minutes from now. I have to get moving. And I offer the same, like I do little mini groups, one-to-one sessions, YouTube channel as well, True Spiritual Awakening. And both Eva and I also host a podcast, spiritual podcast, where we've interviewed Dorothy. We've interviewed Dorothy's friend, David Buckland, twice, and a number of people. It's really grown. We've got some amazing guests on. So that's a passion of ours, and we kind of, we have an episode released every week, and so you can find us there. That's the Endless Possibilities podcast. You can find that on YouTube. And you can
all the major
Dorothy's
podcast platforms. Yeah.
Yes. Good endorsement, Eva.
Yeah. Well, you guys are obviously really busy and doing a lot and providing a lot of resources for our world at this time. So, bless you, dears, all the way down to the very depths of your being. And may your work continue to expand and grow and unfold in the most graceful and powerful, amazing way. And may our world, come together and find the path of awakening that is suited to the people of our time, the people of this modern world. May they all wake up from their sleep